Welcome everyone to St. James Community Square, located on the ancestral stolen lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Really appreciate everyone gathered here tonight. I know there's folks observing Yom Kippur. It's a Thanksgiving long weekend, and so I know, although not ideal, we can see the importance of gathering around conversations like this, and so welcome everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Teddy Chan. I'm the executive director with Kitsilano Neighbourhood House, one of the host organizations that are supporting this conversation tonight. I will be going through a brief intro, followed by a introduction to our partners and our candidates for the question and answer period. Okay? So, as I mentioned, we put this together on behalf of the community in association with the Kitsilano Community Center Association, as well as the West Point Grey Community Center Association and Kitsilano Neighbourhood House. Betty Murphy behind me is the president of the West Point Grey Community Center Association, and Jerry Fast with Kitsilano Community Center Association, I don't believe is here right now, is the president for that board. And so today, before I start and get into the agendas, this isn't possible without a lot of hands. A big applause to our volunteers, our candidates, staff who made the time today. I want to acknowledge, obviously, David, Paul, and Devyani for making the time. I know you have busy campaign schedules, and it's important for us to appreciate their time in being here with us this evening. So the purpose of the town hall tonight is to provide an opportunity for the community to hear from their local candidates, and so that's what we're really here today to do. We in earnesty just want to make this opportunity visible and live for you all who made the time tonight. A couple housekeeping items. Please turn off your cell phones. Washrooms are just out this hall and down the hallway. As I mentioned, signs, if you haven't already done so, we can have staff to help you put them off to the side for the duration of the event. This event is recorded and photographed, and so if you haven't already done so and you don't want to be recorded or photographed, please grab a sticker from one of our volunteers and staff who are wearing yellow shirts or name tags, and so a couple of them will put their hands up with yellow shirts on right now, and so you'll and name tags, and so you'll know who they are if you have any questions during the event itself. To make sure tonight's event goes smoothly, you've seen some of the community guidelines posted around. It does take a collective to ensure that we have healthy conversations tonight, and so if you haven't already done so, our spaces are, designed to be warm, friendly, and where people of all ages can come together to meet individual and collective needs of their neighbors and play an active role in the community. And so we strive to create an environment that is safe, inclusive, and warming. Behaviors that extend outside of that, I will stop moderation, or Betty and I will stop moderation, and we will politely ask folks to either quiet down or leave. Yeah. So due to time constraints, we won't be able to take live questions this evening, and as you're all registered, you had an opportunity to submit your questions to the candidates online. We received many of those questions from the community, which we organized by theme. The questions you will hear tonight reflect the most prominent topics and concerns. We will try to go through as many as we can. Please note that the candidates have not seen the questions and only the primary organizers. The format, the moderator will be asking questions for approximately 60 minutes. Each candidate will be given up to 2 minutes to respond and will be provided 30-second warnings before time is up. The moderation will be done by myself as well as my colleague here, Betty Murphy, and we'll split the moderation process. Lastly, is I appreciate the applause for the event organizers. We're going to ask that the other applauses and or comments that you may so eagerly want to show appreciation for, please hold it till the end. We are running a tight agenda. We do want to hear from the candidates as a primary piece. I will allow for applause at the very end there, and I'm sure we'll all be very appreciative of it. Yep. So, to kick it off, we are going to give each candidate an opportunity to provide their elevator pitch. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes to introduce themselves, why they want to run, and what they want to do for the community. And so I will start waiting for a timer to sit down. I will start with David, with Paul, and then Devyani. Okay? So 3 minutes begins now.
Thanks, Teddy. It's great to see so many people here tonight and participating in democracy in our local community. We're here in Mel Lehan Hall, and in 2015, worked closely with Mel to lobby the city of Vancouver. I was in opposition at the time to get the funding to keep St. James open. And it's such an important facility for us. We also worked together on saving the Hollywood Theatre. Mel recently lost his wife, Barb, and I just wanted to recognize that they were a team and they worked together to make our community better and say thanks to them. They would both be here front row tonight if not for circumstances. It's been an honor to be your MLA for a decade. We've been through a lot in this community. And I know that there are lots of people in our community that are struggling. There are people who are worried that their kids aren't going to be able to live in the community where they grew up. There are seniors who want to stay in the community where they've spent their entire life. There are students that are struggling to afford the education that they know they need to be successful or to find housing that they want. And I know for Vancouver Point Grey, the environment is a huge concern. Addressing climate change, ensuring that we're protecting our wild spaces for the next generation. These are my priorities too. These are the things that drive me. They've driven me since day one when I first ran here in Vancouver Point Grey, and that hasn't changed. Ensuring that we're addressing housing with a middle-income housing plan that's going to deliver 300,000 homes across the province, and a new home ownership model that gets young people a chance to actually get into the market. Hiring the doctors and nurses we need so we can say with a straight face that by the end of 2025, everyone that wants a family doctor in this province will be able to have one. Hiring those doctors and nurses to make sure that our UBC hospital stays open and stays strong, as well as hospitals across the province. And we are making progress on these issues. 250,000 people got a family doctor last year. 160,000 more will get a family doctor in the next 6 months. Rents are finally starting to come down in the province. Coming down from record highs, though, we've still got to do so much more. And I'm excited to be here with you. I know there's one thing that's true, though, is we're not going to be able to address these major challenges through division, through cuts, through conspiracy theories. We got to take them on head on. We got to take them on head on. We got to follow the science, believe climate science, believe the vaccines work, and take on, why is that a shocking thing to say in 2024? Believe that vaccines work. They do work. I'm taking a strong position on that. And
All right, sorry, David. Time's up.
And we need to work together to address those issues. Thanks very much.
Okay, just a quick reminder, please, no interruptions. I won't hesitate to pause and prolong the conversations if it continues. Okay. Paul, your 3 minutes begins.
Thanks everyone for being here this evening. My name is Paul Ratchford, and candidate here in Vancouver Point Grey. This is my home. I was born in Kitsilano. I love British Columbia, and I love Canada. I'm concerned about the direction that we're headed in this province. People are struggling. They're struggling to afford housing, food, and energy. And housing has been one of the greatest failures of this government. We've seen an increasingly top-down, autocratic approach to housing. It's a rule from Victoria approach to the streets of Kitsilano, and that's not something we want to see. You know, this is a government that that pretends to care about providing housing to people, but when we look at the results, they're terrible. You know, right here in the community at 3rd and Larch, we've seen tens of millions of dollars in financing go towards a project that delivered micro units at around $2,700 a month. It makes no sense. It's billions of dollars in boondoggles. And you know, on top of all that, we failed to build housing in this province for people. Professor Andrei Pavlov has a great graph that shows that completions in this province are down. So not only are we not getting housing built for people, but we're also bulldozing over local neighborhoods. And that's the wrong approach.
Sorry, please hold applause.
And that's not the only failure of this government. You know, we can get into the mental health and addiction side of things. I was just in at St. Paul's Hospital the other day, and there it's a revolving door of people who have serious mental health and addictions issues, and they stabilize them, and then you know, they turn them right back out into the streets. It's truly inhumane what's going on there. Under David Eby's leadership, Vancouver has become the fentanyl capital of the world. If you, that's from The Spectator, not from me. And the downtown east side is an ongoing tragedy here. It's a black mark on our province and on our city. People come in here from all around the world, and they're shocked to see that. And we need to do much better. Crime is an ongoing issue in this province as well. You know, we noticed in downtown Vancouver recently that a person had their hand chopped off, and another person was murdered, and that was by somebody who had over 60 interactions with the police. This is under David Eby's leadership. It's tremendous, tremendous failure. And then there's the general economic side of things. You know, half of young people are looking at leaving this province today. We have record deficits, record debt. And what are we getting for it? We're getting nothing. You know, you look at healthcare in this province. How is it possible that we're spending over 1/3 of the provincial budget on healthcare, and there's 1 million people in this province that don't have a family doctor? So the Conservative Party needs to restore the dream that it was to be a British Columbian.
Thank you, Paul, for your comments. Sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, guys. Everyone, equity is quite important to us, and you know, we just please hold your applause. The longer this takes to moderate, the fewer questions we get through, and that's I think hurts everybody in the audience. Okay. Devyani, would you like your 3 minutes to begin now?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight on a Saturday evening. And thank you for the organizers for giving me the opportunity to engage with you all. I want to acknowledge we are on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh people. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Dr. Devyani Singh. I'm a climate scientist and an economist. I'm a renter, I'm an immigrant, I'm a woman of color. When I did my PhD at UBC, I lived below median income for the greater part of the decade. I'm running because people like me, the marginalized people, are not often, if at all, represented in politics. I'm running because I'm terrified for our future in the face of a climate emergency. I'm running because I'm frustrated with the lack of government action to deal with these crises at the scale that science requires. The climate emergency, housing affordability, increasing cost of living, lack of access to healthcare, seniors who want to age with dignity and in place, people living with disabilities who are going deeper into poverty, students who are faced with major climate anxiety and then are getting costed out of their own neighborhoods. I'm running because for too long, government has ignored science, and it's time for me to bring the science to them. So I'm here today, if you give me the honor and opportunity to be your MLA and to represent you. I will work for you and I will show up for you every day. I will fight for you. I will be honest and transparent. And I'm going to work with experts and communities to deliver solutions that are based and rooted in science. That is why I'm running with the BC Greens. Because as we have seen in this election, it is the only party that truly cares about the people and the planet and centers them and makes decisions based on science. We, the BC Greens, have a beautiful vision for the future of this province. not one of fear and doomsday that the other parties like to give you. And that beautiful, thriving, sustainable British Columbia is possible. An economy with clean, sustainable jobs of the future. An economy ready to tackle and go into the next century and not be stuck in the past fossil fuel era that is set for doom and failure. That is why I'm here today. And I ask you, vote for hope. Vote for the vision that you want to see. Don't vote out of fear that the other two parties tell you that if you don't vote for me, then the other guy that you hate more will win. It's time to change that. Each government comes and tells you the previous one's failures are there, but they've been in power for almost a decade each time. You know when the government worked for you? Was when the BC Greens held the balance of power. We passed Clean BC Act and a lot more. So I'm begging you to let me have the honor to represent you and to work for you and show up for you and be there every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Devyani. We're going to enter into the first set of questions here. Betty Murphy will be facilitating the first set of questions, and then I'll be back once she closes off the last set and the closing statements.
Thank you, Teddy. And actually, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for coming out. And thank you for holding your applause. And I'd just like to allow you to have one big clap for Teddy and for all the candidates for their introductions. Thank you. Now that you got that out of your system, I hope you can hold it till the end. And so what we did was we took all of, there's 300 and some odd 60 people who attended, and so you can imagine we got a lot of questions. So it was all put into categories, and the ones with the most interest are the ones that we prioritized, and also the wording is scripted. So I'm going to be very careful to make sure I ask them correctly, and I'm going to be reading them, so excuse me for reading. Since we started with David for the introductions, we'll start with Devyani for the first answer. This is the question. So this is about the BC zoning bills. The provincial introduction of BC zoning bills 44, 46, 47, and 18 that transfer planning and zoning authority from municipalities to the province requires what is deemed a one-size-fits-all approach for upzoning across the province for multiplexes, multifamily, and towers. There are municipalities and communities that are calling this provincial overreach into municipal planning authority. And that raises concerns. It is beyond the local infrastructure capacity of most areas. So what is your position on this legislation? And if elected, would you repeal, revise, or implement this legislation? And what, if anything, would you do differently? Devyani.
Thank you. And this is a question that's very interesting because there is no simple answer to this. Do I believe that we need more density? Yes, we do. We need more housing supply? Yes, we do. But do I believe that we can push forward policies without local consultation and without providing the support for infrastructure that is needed? No. So I think from what I have heard, since I am not an elected yet, I have heard about what happened, is that there has not been enough consultation with communities and local governments on how this density is to be built. Let's say you want to build a bunch of density in towers along the Broadway plan, there has to be some funding given to the municipalities. You have to upgrade your sewage systems, you need to plan for open spaces, for more active transportation, things like that. And then the municipalities are feeling that they are being left with the burden of financing this. But do we need density? We do. We need to increase density across, at least in Vancouver and in Point Grey. But there is a right and a wrong way to do so. And so when elected, I would like to take a review of this bill and along with the Greens and discuss with communities, municipalities, First Nations, and all the other stakeholders involved on how we can build this density and create the housing supply that we do need for the future. And at the same time, ensure that there is proper support given to the municipalities to build this density the right way.
Thank you, Devyani. So next is David. No, sorry, Paul. Going the wrong way.
Yeah, I'm glad this, and I'm just going to finish off with the restoring the dream because it ties into this topic, which is that we need to be able to build housing, food, and energy for everyone in this province. So if they have a regular job, they can afford that for their families. And what we've seen from this government is this top-down approach that simply doesn't work. And when you go and you walk across the Broadway corridor, you can go on a walking tour there, and you can really see the devastation firsthand. All across there, you see, perfectly livable units that are being replaced now with smaller units that are more expensive, and frankly, it really doesn't make sense. And I question the idea that somebody in Victoria should be making decisions about growth on the local streets of Highbury or Balsam in Kitsilano when many of the people in Victoria will not even be able to place those streets on a map. So it just, it makes no sense, and we need to get back to ensuring that there's adequate housing supply in this province, but that doesn't mean bulldozing the neighborhoods in Kitsilano.
Thank you, Paul. And please hold your applause. And David.
Thanks. I was in Comox yesterday, day before campaign, and I met Lisa. And Lisa lived in a condo, and her family, her adult kid, Ben, was renting. And Ben's family was moving from rental to rental to rental, and Lisa was in the condo. So they sat down for dinner one day and they said, why don't we work together? And Lisa sold her condo. They used the money to buy a home, and they turned the home into 2 units. Lisa lives in one, and Ben and his family live in the other, which meant that Ben and his family could have another kid. That's what this is about. It's about not having to go through a huge amount of red tape, hire an architect and a consultant and all these other things to be able to use your home for yourself, for your family members, or maybe rent out a suite. This is the housing that we need. And I know what's been happening in our neighborhood. Old homes get torn down. They have a basement suite. They have a main floor suite. They get torn down, they get replaced with one home. We're actually losing housing in our community. You can't lose housing in the middle of a housing crisis. And so making sure that people have options like that is so important. And I can't sit here and listen to Mr. Ratchford representing the BC Conservatives pretend that he cares about people and low-cost rental housing. He's on Twitter multiple times speaking against basic rent control. He calls rent control poison. This is the idea that at the end of the year, you have a fixed amount of rent increase that, as a tenant that you can afford so you can stay in your home. If we get rid of rent control in our community, with all due respect to concern about the low-rise buildings, Mr. Ratchford, the seniors and kids are going to be evicted to the streets. We need rent control to protect those vulnerable tenants. And it's not just Mr. Ratchford's position, that's the position of BC Conservatives. So we've got to protect the people. We've got to make sure they have housing options, a place to live. They're treated with dignity and respect. That's what housing policy is about.
Thank you. So actually, I'm just going to give you each like 30 seconds to specifically answer the question about what you would do with the BC zoning bills, 44, 46, 47, and 18, okay? So we'll start with you, Devyani.
All right.
Thank
I
you.
thought I answered that in saying I would like to undertake a review of it when elected and actually, work with the experts and the communities to reach an answer on that.
Thank you. And Paul?
Yeah, I'd like to, there's none of the housing bills that I like, and I've said that publicly in the past. It is a failed approach, and to the point regarding rent control, our leaders covered that, and
No, just speaking to the bills, please. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No. All those housing bills are not something that I support.
Thank you. And David?
Yes, we would keep the bills. We would build the housing that people need. Pretty straightforward. We would also keep rent control.
Thank you. Okay, no clapping, please. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, so question number 2, affordable housing. So the BC zoning bills and other provincial programs are generally resulting in housing units that are too small and too expensive for average renters or buyers.
Okay.
Often, these buildings include government subsidies and large tower density bonuses to developers and real estate investment trusts, REITs, for affordable housing that is not actually affordable and small for local needs. For example, 1807 Larch Street, which was recently built, has 393 square foot studios at 2650 to 2750, 517 square feet at 3275, and 589 square feet, 2 bedrooms at 4200. These buildings often displace older, more affordable housing and local residents and inflate land values and rents, and are not consistent with local area character. So, if elected, would you continue or reconsider these policies? And would you create affordable housing that is planned within the local context, community needs, and infrastructure capacity? So we'll start with David.
Thanks, Betty. There was a lot in that question. Let's just take the large. Let's take the large project. Okay, this was an old church. It was up for sale. It was purchased by a developer. What was approved for the site was luxury housing, unaffordable to 99% of the province. Condos, not affordable homes. So working with the City of Vancouver and the property owner, the province provided a guarantee on the financing, which brought down the cost of the financing. And in exchange, the home builder agreed to build 19 affordable units on the site at no cost to the public. Didn't cost the public a cent. Every cent of the loan was paid back with interest, and we built 19 affordable homes that wouldn't have otherwise been there. It would have been luxury housing. These are actually the programs that we need. If we don't build that affordable housing, if we don't get involved, what would have been built there was luxury homes, unaffordable to the vast majority of British Columbians. And what you hear from the BC Conservatives is, the government doesn't have a role to play here. We should have let the market deal with that site. Well, we would have not had 19 affordable rental homes that people need in our community if we just let the market develop. And those market rental homes that you heard Betty describe help pay for the building for the affordable units. You know, we have to do all of the things to deal with housing. We can't abandon the controls on Airbnb. We can't let people have empty homes in our community, and all of the people in this room who live in this community know we had a huge problem with empty homes in our community. That's why we brought in the speculation and vacancy tax. The BC Conservatives want to get rid of that too. We went after the money launderers. We ensured there's a beneficial ownership registry. Mr. Ratchford doesn't even believe that's an issue. These are serious problems that we've taken on, and we've got to keep going.
Thank you, David. Paul.
Yeah, rents have roughly doubled under David Eby's leadership. And I'll tell you something that hasn't doubled in this province. That's incomes. That's a major problem for British Columbians. And 7 years ago, or maybe even before that, they rolled out this housing plan. And the housing plan has failed. It has not worked for British Columbians. Well, and frankly, nothing really seems to work that this government does. You can look at healthcare, you can look at housing, you can look at the general economy, but don't just take it from me. I mean, half of young British Columbians are thinking about leaving this province right now, and the Larch Street is such a great example where it makes no sense to be involved in a project that's building micro units that are not at all tied to local incomes. I mean, to the extent that you're going to be involved in housing and financing projects, one would think that you would want it to actually be affordable for people, and that hasn't at all been the case. So it's been a complete boondoggle and a total waste. And then just going back to the theme on housing in general, which is that this government is not listening to people. They simply aren't. And here here in Kitsilano, we see that. We see that with what's going on at 7th and Arbutus. They want to put a drug site right across the street from St. Augustine's School. And we see that with what's going on with the housing at 3rd and Larch and really across the Broadway corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Oh, please hold it. Thank you. Okay, Devyani.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by saying that neither of the two parties tell you how they're going to achieve that affordable housing. The Greens have a plan, and we have a plan to actually deliver affordable housing. You can talk about the market playing a role in it. Do you know that almost 60% of housing in the past few years was bought by real estate investment trusts? That's money going to shareholders abroad. It's not providing you housing, it's for profit. What about when protecting existing affordable stock? If you drive down 12th Ave just before Fur, there's a whole apartment complex ready to be torn down, replaced by high-rise luxury condos. That's not protecting it. What we need is vacancy control. You can talk about rent control, but vacancy control is the one true way to get affordability and to have that for people. Because you can build more housing, and you say, well, if it's more expensive and this person moves there, let's say I'm paying $2,500 for my house right now, I can now afford a $4,200 condo, I go there. So now someone else can live in my $2,500 condo. But that's wrong, because without vacancy control, the moment I leave that $2,500 condo, we'll now rent at $4,000. It's no longer affordable. Vacancy control is the one thing that will achieve affordability for renters. Almost half of the people in the city are renters. Immigrants are renters, students are renters. Median income is $44,000. And if you think affordable housing, according to the NDP, which is market rate, and I don't even know what according to the Conservatives it is, that is more than half of a person's income going into housing. How are they supposed to eat? How are you supposed to live when you are scared about just paying rent so you don't end up on the streets? So as BC Greens, we will push for stronger rental controls. We will push for vacancy control, more nonprofit housing, and building a land trust and helping co-ops and other forms of social housing out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Devyani. So the next question is regarding UBCX subway extension. The province is currently conducting a review of a business case for the extension of Broadway subway from Arbutus to UBC. This would cause development at Jericho Lands and tower development throughout Kitsilano, West Point Grey, UBC Golf Course, and UBC Campus. Other current Metro regional transit projects, such as the Langley extension, are over budget, while the transit infrastructure in Surrey and Fraser Valley that is rapidly growing is currently underserved. TransLink faces an annual operating deficit of around $600 million, and no funding has been confirmed yet for the UBC extension. If elected, would you approve the UBCX subway extension, given the many regional needs and limited funds? And would you ensure that the annual TransLink operating deficit is funded so that local transit services are not cut? So we'll start with Paul, and you have 2 minutes.
Thanks for that. The UBC extension is an interesting one. We need to build transit across this province, and there's no question about that. And but locally, what we've seen, and really across the Broadway corridor, has been a train wreck. It hasn't worked for small businesses. It hasn't worked for renters. It hasn't worked for homeowners. And like so many of the things that we've seen lately, it hasn't been on time or on budget. And I've yet to see a compelling business case for this extension, and we've seen the issues with the current one so far. So that's what we're looking at right there. And a Conservative government will absolutely be building transit across this province, and we need a tremendous amount of transit. But I have questions around the business case for the UBC extension.
Thank you. Hey, Benny.
Thank you. Do I believe in the UBC extension for SkyTrain? Yes, I do. We need that. There's a lot of students that travel there. Remember, as a person who went to school at UBC for 7 years, there's a lot of us who live off campus because of the lack of affordable housing. And without this UBC extension of the SkyTrain, people are spending up to 3 hours commuting in a day. That's the time they take away from getting good, healthy meals, making food for themselves, or being able to stay fit. Now, speaking about the question of density around the corridor, that's a separate thing from do we need the UBC SkyTrain extension. The density can be done in the right way, as I mentioned earlier, and that definitely needs to be reviewed when and if this UBC extension is approved. At the same time, the BC Greens have fully committed to the $600 million for TransLink to keep them afloat. We need good transit, we need free public transit. For those of you like the Conservatives who say, oh, it's over budget, and where will the money come from? I ask, just let's start with those few billions of dollars of subsidies we give to fossil fuel every year. And let's give it to the people instead. We have the money in this province, we just refuse to spend it on the people. We like to give it to the large donors, we like to give it to our lobby friends, we do not give it to the people who matter. So that's what I believe in. We do need SkyTrain, and we need transit across this province, because that is how you build a green, sustainable future. It builds jobs, it builds community, it makes things more affordable. And we need to increase density in Vancouver and across this province, but we have to do it right. We have to do it equitably. We have to do it in a way that's affordable and in a way that's done with consultation with the communities and the municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Devyani. And thank you for holding your applause. David.
Thanks. It's a tough format because I want to go back to two pieces that Paul said. First of all, he raised the issue of wages. We have the fastest growing wages in Canada. When we formed government, we had the lowest minimum wage in Canada. Now we have the highest. And our unemployment rate is one of the best in Canada. It's 1.5 points lower than Alberta. Rents are going down in BC. We're the only province where rents are going down in Canada right now. And we got to keep working. And that site at Arbutus and 8th is not a drug site. It's housing for vulnerable seniors that desperately need housing. What you're hearing from the BC Conservatives is, no housing, no transit. And the idea that we would stop the SkyTrain at Arbutus and not finish it to the largest employer in the region, that we would run heavy diesel buses up and down Broadway as UBC continues to expand, which it will, with more and more students coming in and workers coming in. What kind of a life in our community will that be? We need transit to go all the way to UBC, of course we do. We need transit all over the region. We gotta invest in transit. This is the future of our region. I mean, we could just build a tunnel under Highway 1 like Ontario, or we could actually build the transit that we need when we expand Highway 1, have a bus on shoulder lanes so people in the valley get the transit they need. I think it's a basic, and the fact that there's any kind of perseveration around the fact that we need transit in our region, including the UBC extension, is bizarre to me. We also need housing that's near the transit. We're buying the land around the transit stations so we can ensure that people who actually use transit can afford to live near transit. It's a critical principle. And you saw what we did at Heather Street, ensuring affordable home ownership for people at that site. I would love for us to be able to do that at Jericho as well, so that people can afford to live in the west side of the city of Vancouver.
Thank you, David. So the next question is regarding the future of the elected park board. Vancouver has an elected park board, has had an elected park board for over 130 years. Mayor Ken Sims' ABC Council passed a motion 2 weeks before Christmas in 2023 asking the province of British Columbia to amend the Vancouver Charter and remove the elected park board mid-term. The park board has received a legal opinion that removing an elected park board mid-term would be against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, since 170,000 votes were cast for this term, and ABC did not remove the park board in their platform. If elected, would you and your party remove the elected park board or allow them to complete their term with voters to decide at the next civic election based on party platforms? And if the new city council still wants to remove the park board, would you and your party require a referendum? So this will start with Devyani.
Thank you. I love the Parks Board. I love Vancouver's parks and beaches, and I think we need to preserve the public access to these parks and beaches. One of the things that will happen when you remove the Vancouver Park Board is that anything that's not a designated park or beach can be sold. And I do not want to see our beautiful parks and public lands be sold off to private entities. I stand behind the elected park board. They should be able, it's a democratically elected park board, and they should be allowed to end their term. If it's the people who decide, I think there should be a referendum, either in the next election or the one after. Let the voters decide the future of this. The other issue I have with with getting rid of the Parks Board, as has been said, is opening the Vancouver Charter. It shouldn't be just a simple majority of the current council that allows you to open something as important as the Vancouver Charter and make changes to it. I truly feel you need a little bit more than that, and not just one majority party that can come and force what they believe on you. So for me, this elected park board goes further than just about this Vancouver Charter. And I don't think that's a democracy if that happens. So I will stand by letting them run their course. And if needed, let the voters decide, put it to a referendum, and let the people of this city decide whether they want to keep it or not.
Okay, thank you. Please hold. And David.
Thanks, Betty. A couple of my colleagues are former Park Board commissioners, Spencer Chandra Herbert and Nikki Sharma. They're very proud of the work that they did on the Park Board, and they're very proud of the Park Board. I'll admit, of late, I've been challenged by the Park Board. We used to have Point Grey Fiesta in our community, and it was run by volunteers. It's hard to run something like that. The Park Board failed, in my opinion, to work with those volunteers to make sure the Fiesta happened this year. The Kids Showboat, 100-year institution, run by Barry Leinbach. Barry's been trying so hard with the Park Board to get clarity around the future of that with the renovations that's happening at the pool, and he's really struggling to do that. So I just want to say that because, I have good feelings about the Park Board. I have challenging feelings about the Park Board in terms of what's been happening in our community. The City of Vancouver has asked the province to pass amendments. We've sent the city back with a list of homework. Devyani raises an issue about the potential sale of properties, other issues. There's obviously an Indigenous component as well that they've got to work out. There are title claims. There's various ownerships of various parks. It's a lot of work. It's very unlikely that this would be a priority for the province before the next municipal election. And they've got a lot of work ahead of them.
Thank you, David. Paul.
It's very interesting to hear David Eby say that because earlier this year in March, he was talking about working with the city to dissolve the Parks Board. So I'm not sure if this is another one of the many flip-flops that we've seen, but you can look that up on the media, and I would welcome you to do so. And I have concerns about protecting our green spaces, especially as the city continues to grow. This is a critical item, and our leader has been very clear that he wants to see more of a democratic process with respect to our decision-making around the Parks Board, and I absolutely support that. That is critical. It's a major decision for the future of this city, and we need to make sure our urban green spaces are protected. I do want to briefly touch on another point there that was made before as well about incomes, because we are absolutely in a terrible position in this province in terms of our general prosperity, and in this country. The Trudeau-Eby alliance has absolutely failed.
Oh, please don't clap.
We have one of the largest productivity gaps in 100 years between Canada and the United States. It is an embarrassment.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So that ends my segment. So thank you very much, everyone, and here's Terry.
Thank you, Betty. Just a reminder, we just really do want to respect everyone in this room, both patrons as well as candidates. Sorry, I'm not gonna be taking comments while we're trying to moderate a conversation. I won't, as a host, I will remind, as a host, I don't mind, I don't mind stopping this conversation today. I do want to just remind folks. Okay, so we can sit here and. So the folks here, I will ask you to leave. I will ask you to leave. Yeah. So. I'm asking a simple reminder, okay? I'm asking a simple request for folks. I've made it very clear that we're doing this out of our own time. And so please, if you're invited into this room, I ask you to participate with the values of our organizers in mind, okay? All right, so I'm gonna move on to the fifth question. Jericho lands. The Jericho lands are 90 acres in West Point Grey with proposed development for 24,000 to 30,000 additional people to potentially over triple the population of the existing neighborhood of 13,000 with towers up to 50 stories. This is in addition to more proposed increased development throughout the neighborhood. Do you agree? The question is, do you agree with this scale development at the Jericho lands? And if so, how would you propose to provide amenities and infrastructure for the scale of growth, given that the current BC zoning bills limit what municipalities can recover from development to fund growth? We will start with David for this. 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Teddy. I think it's a critically important site for the future of our city, but not just for the future of our city, for doing housing that works for people. It means it's affordable. It means it's walkable for families. It supports people who work in our communities. And if you send me back as MLA and as the leader of the party that has the most seats, I'll make sure that Jericho is developed consistent with those values. The City of Vancouver is in their planning process. We're fully supportive of the city working through that with the community and making sure that that's a livable site. For the province's part, we'll make sure that the affordability is built into that site for the people who want to make our province go.
Thank you, David. Paul?
Yeah, I think one of the critical issues with respect to the Jericho lands development is there has really been a lack of community consultation. It fits with what is going on, the overall kind of top-down autocratic approach again that we see over and over, lack of listening. You know, David Eby and his government are not particularly good at listening to people. And you know, I've been out talking to thousands of people in the community, knocking on doors for a long time, and there's serious concerns about putting 50-story towers into the Jericho lands, and I share those concerns. So you know, there may have been a time you know, over a decade ago when David Eby was, you know, working on civil liberties and was actually focused on listening to the people. But it seems like, just like Christy Clark in the past, he's kind of lost his way and he's not listening to people anymore. That's what happens sometimes to people in power, and it's a shame. But the Jericho lands absolutely needs a local voice, and we need to make sure we represent those local voices with respect to its future development.
Thank you, Paul. Devyani, your 2 minutes.
Thank you. When it comes to Jericho lands, I am in support of it, but I think we do need to work a bit more with the city. As David said, the city is in its planning processes. I don't think a final plan is out yet. We do need density, and it is a part of reconciliation with the First Nations. It is a project run by the MSD, and it is only fair that they also have a right in the future development and economic prosperity of this province that we have denied them for centuries and on their own lands. So I do feel we have a role here to work with them, to work with the First Nations, and to work with the communities and the municipality. They are providing affordable housing. It will be walkable. It will have access to parks and beaches, providing we don't sell off our parks and beaches and get rid of the Parks Board. But we need to ensure, if and when this does get built, it looks into climate resilience. And for that, I mean, you know, if people have concerns about towers, how does that suit with the future of like with earthquake potentials when we live in BC, or in terms of climate resilience and the kind of materials we are using. And so I do think there is, and as far as I know, I think people did speak about Jericho lands at City Council, so I do not agree that not enough consultation was done. People were given the opportunity to come and speak. But at the same time, as I've said, this is with City Council. They are reviewing the plans, and I would suggest you reach out to your elected city councilors if you want to weigh in on what this future Jericho lands could potentially look like.
Thank you, Devyani. The next question is around the Broadway plan and infrastructure growth. The Broadway plan has been expanded in the implementation of the BC zoning bills that require removing limits to numbers of towers per block, even on side streets from 16th Avenue to 1st Avenue. If the subway to UBC is approved, this same plan would be required to be extended to all of Kitsilano and West Point Grey. Do you support this scale of development in the Broadway plan and expand it across Kitsilano and West Point Grey? And how do you propose to provide funding for infrastructure and amenities such as utilities, parks and recs, schools, affordable $10 a day childcare for this growth? We'll start with Paul for this question.
Yeah, what we've seen with the Broadway plan seems to be, essentially there's these, lobby groups and special interest groups, and those are groups like, Abundant Housing Vancouver, and there's also people that are very close to the premier, like Tom Davidoff, who have been giving very very poor advice about the future of growth in our city and in our province. And specifically on the Broadway plan, again, it does not work. It doesn't work for small businesses, renters, and owners. It's really not difficult to see that if you are walking around in the local area. And I would encourage everyone that's here tonight to go over to Broadway and Arbutus and see the site that's right across the street from St. Augustine's. And there you see, they're proposing 129 units of SRO style housing with an on-site drug consumption center right across the street from St. Augustine's. It makes absolutely no sense. And the community has fought back against this, but the government continues to push forward. They can continue to bully local neighborhoods, and that's not something that we want to see. The Broadway plan has not been working well in that area, so I would suggest that we should take a sober second look at it.
Thank you, Paul. Devyani, your 2 minutes.
Thank you. This kind of brings me back to when I answered the transit question. Do we need density in the city? Yes. Do I agree with the way the Broadway plan is done? Not as it currently stands. I believe we need to have a look at the Broadway plan because it is missing some very important amendments, which include things like affordability, protecting existing stock. As I mentioned earlier, when you drive down 12th Ave, you will see existing rental buildings being torn down to build luxury towers. I don't think that is providing equity or affordability. It has been proven that building towers and mixing them in with mansions actually reduces equity in a region. So, but medium density all along, that increases equity amongst residents. So there is a right way and a wrong way, according to experts, to increase density. And I don't think that the Broadway plan, the way it is currently passed, is meeting all of those needs. And it does require a few amendments, like access to open spaces. WHO dictates that 7.5 square meters per person within a 15-minute walking area should be is what people need for a healthy future. The Broadway plan is less than 2 meters. So we still need to review it. And as it currently stands, I would not be fully supportive of it being pushed all the way to UBC. But we do need density. I'm not saying we don't need density, but we need to do it right. And in working with the communities, keeping the characteristics of the communities, and working with the municipal governments to provide them with the infrastructure help and the funding they need to build out that kind of infrastructure, and not letting them foot the bill of such expansion.
Thank you, Devyani. David, your 2 minutes.
Yeah, I support building housing near transit stations. I think that's an important solution to the problems of traffic, affordability, a growing region. We added 300,000 people to our province in the last 2 years. And people need to get around. We need to address the climate crisis. We need to make sure that people have access to affordable housing. If there's no housing for the people who make our cities go, the teachers, the nurses, the people who work at the coffee shops, everywhere else, then our city is not going to be successful. We have to build that housing. And that includes high-density housing near transit. So I support it unambiguously. And I also support people participating in civic elections as well. I've heard a lot of municipal issues canvassed here today. As a province, we'll be clear. The City of Vancouver has to ensure that they're building housing faster. In Point Grey Village, there's a proposal for an apartment building. The retail area could hugely benefit from having a bunch of renters living there. The stores are really struggling, and students are desperate for housing. So are other people in the community. That building has been on the books for at least 5 years. It hasn't been built. It's only going up in cost. The rents are only going to be more expensive when it takes that long to build that housing. We got to build more housing faster, and we got to make sure that we're building it near transit. And you know, you can agree or disagree. That's what democracy is all about. But it's important for the livability and the future of our region, in my opinion.
Thank you, David. The next question's on supportive housing. Addiction treatment and supportive housing can be done in many models, such as harm reduction, under harm reduction or drug-free recovery oriented. There currently is a proposed supportive housing tower project at Arbutus and 7th, across the street from an elementary school, whose supportive housing model may include active drug use. What is your opinion on the location of this proposed project, and if elected, what would your approach to supportive housing look like? Devyani, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. We do need to build a lot more supportive housing. We need to look at the opioid crisis and we need to deal with it at the scale that is needed. There need to be safe consumption sites where people can consume both inject and for inhalation. This site has not been built yet, and as you said, there might be active drug use. Nothing's started yet. It has not been fully approved as to the kind of residence that will be, but what I want to bring your notice to is that these are people having mental health issues. This is for seniors, this is for elderly, this is for the poor people out there. Instead, what the other two parties, the only time they really care about the people suffering from these issues is when it benefits them politically. They go at each other. They are now looking at involuntary care. They are taking the human out of this crisis. We have to deal with it with compassion and the scale that is required. I think it would be when the city does start to build it, and if there is a way to screen the residents that come in, given that it is near a school, it is near a park, I would be supportive of speaking to the communities and the city on that. But when it comes to building supportive housing in general, we do need more of it. We need to get people off the streets. We need to get them the help that they need. We need them spaces where they can recover, clean sites where they can recover, and we need affordable sites for that to happen.
Thank you, Devyani. David, your 2 minutes.
Thanks. We have a lot of people living in their cars in our community. I don't know if you've noticed on 4th, on Blanca. They used to live on 16th along Pacific Spirit before Metro put up signs along the side of the park. We got to build housing for people. We got to bring people inside. I'm hearing a lot of complaints from Paul, and I heard a lot from his leader during the debate. I'm not hearing a lot of solutions. We got to build the housing. We have to build supportive housing for people. And there has been an issue with supportive housing. We've had people in supportive housing with brain injuries and addiction, mental health issues that caused a lot of chaos. So we built complex care housing with intensive medical supports. And there were still people failing out of that. Failing is the wrong word. They weren't successful. They were threatening people, starting fires, big problems. So they were evicted out. So the people left outside were the most challenged, the most ill. And so that's why, Devyani, we're looking at involuntary care for some people, because they're just not successful in any other kind of housing. They're not safe themselves, and the community's not safe as a result. But we're sure not disregarding their humanity. It's their humanity that's driving us to do this work. And we actually do need to build supportive housing in our community, in every community in the province. Everybody's got to do a little bit. And we've got a lot of people, a lot of seniors who are looking for housing who will benefit from that too. It'll be a well-run building. We'll make sure that it's well-run, that it has the staffing levels to be successful. And I'll be accountable as your MLA if you elect me to make sure that that happens.
Thank you, David. Paul?
It is a real tragedy that there's people living in their cars, and it's on your watch. It's been 7 years now. There's only so long you can go on with the Smoke and Mirrors Act, the deflections, pretending like we care and we're going to make something happen, but nothing ever happens to actually improve people's lives. That's the issue here. And when we look at Arbutus and Broadway, it's a great example. There's a neighborhood group there that issued a call for change and a new direction in this province, a direction that actually addresses the needs of people, because congregating at-risk people into 129 units of SRO-style housing doesn't make sense for at-risk people. It doesn't make sense for the community. It simply doesn't work, and that should be common sense. I've been glad to see a little bit of a move in the direction of the involuntary care side, because we do need to go in that direction. And there are people who are suffering from serious issues, and they're a risk to themselves and the communities. We saw in downtown Vancouver, again, the case of the person who had over 60 interactions with the police, and they were in serious mental health decline before they went and chopped off a hand and killed a person. That's totally unacceptable. And it's on your watch, David Eby. It's on your watch. So we need to make these changes. The Conservative government will do that. We'll bring common sense change. We'll bring back facilities like Riverview, and we'll make the lives of British Columbians better again.
Thank you. Paul, please hold the pause. The next question's on cost of living. Many people are struggling with the rising cost of living that is creating insecurity, struggle, and exhaustion from the costs of rent, mortgages, food, childcare, taxes, and transportation, and so on. How will you address the rising cost of living, and how will you make life more affordable for local people? David, 2 minutes.
Thanks. There are people who are struggling out there with the cost of groceries and other basics. We're ensuring that people have access to an immediate, the average is about $1,000 a household, grocery rebate in the first year, and tax cut going forward. People can't wait. There's lots of people who are struggling out there. They need that support. And car insurance, we're going to make sure to keep rates low. Paul's party is suggesting that we turn people over to the Alberta and Ontario model of car insurance. Now, our rates are down $500 since we got ICBC back on the right track. Call up a relative or a friend in Ontario and Alberta, ask them how much they're paying for car insurance, and they'll tell you it's almost double. Can't afford that. We've got $500 million going into building new childcare spaces across the province. When we formed government, childcare was $52 a day on average in this province. Now it's $17 a day, and our target is $10. And we're going to keep building more because we've seen massive growth. As price comes down, demand has gone up. People have been going back to work. It's been one of our economic strategies, actually, and it's supported families across the province. It's initiatives like this that are at risk in this election. The leader of the BC Conservatives, John Rustad, has said that he's going to remove that middle-income childcare support and turn people over to private insurers. The guy has an $80 million mansion just down the road. He loves John's housing plan. And I'll tell you, I know whose side I'm on. It's on the side of people who are struggling and need support right now. It's families in British Columbia. And I know whose side the Conservatives are on, because they're putting big, big signs in front of their mansions.
Thank you, David. Sorry, no applause. Paul, 2 minutes.
Yeah, the Conservatives will deliver the largest tax cut for homeowners and for renters in BC history. That's the Rustad rebate, and it's a key plank. It's of our affordability platform. But overall, again, people are absolutely struggling, and we need competent leadership. We can't have leadership anymore that is running a $9 billion deficit and doubling the debt and seeing the quality of services decline. That's simply unacceptable. Again, you go back and you think, like, how is it possible that we have people who are out on the streets and they can't afford housing and food and energy in this province? And it's because we don't have the drivers going. We have a public sector that is growing rapidly and a private sector that's completely stagnant. It's absolutely unsustainable. And if we want quality services moving forward, then we're going to make sure we're going to need to make sure that we have a robust private sector to drive that and to pay for our healthcare, pay for housing, or all other items that we may want. That's critically important. So, it's again, it's time here in BC for a new approach on housing, on healthcare, mental health and addictions, and a whole host of other areas. Common sense change. Just a few days to go.
Thank you, Paul. Devyani, your 2 minutes.
Thank you. We are seeing unprecedented cost of living increases. And it's kind of like something what Sonia said, that poverty is a politically created issue. We'd like to blame it on the people, but it is a politically created issue. Let's talk about rent for renters. Like I said, vacancy control. It's a no-brainer. I move out, the next person has to pay the same rent. Now, my landlord's not interested in evicting me for false pretenses. That's one of the ways we put the rents down. We invest in non-market housing, we invest in co-ops and make sure they have the support. We're talking about mortgages. You know who can get a 10-year interest-free loan in BC right now? It's LNG. But imagine if you could get that for your own house. Wouldn't that be great? When we're talking about food security, our prices are going up. You know what impacts a lot of our food security? Half of our food comes from California and Mexico that have severe wildfires and droughts. We need to build food resilience and food security in BC. That's what brings our costs down. When we lose wheat crops in the middle part of the country, that increases our price of our bread, and including for those of you who eat meat, because that's what the animals eat, grain. We're talking about taxes. You know who's getting the biggest tax cuts? Are the rich and the companies, the big oil. We're not the ones, we're the ones paying those taxes. That's how we bring it down. And then let's talk transportation. An average household in BC spends over $10,000 a year on transportation. This is why we need free public transit, accessible transit, efficient transit across this province. It deals with affordability. It also deals with the climate crisis. That is what the BC Greens will bring to you. We will hit affordability every day in every way, everything that you pay for, while the other two here will just argue the other one's plan's bad, but will actually not really give you what they plan to do.
Thank you, Devyani. Seeing that it's near 6:55, and I did promise you all that this agenda would end at 7, we're gonna go to our closing statements right now. So the closing statements will be up to 1 minute per candidate, and the first closing statement will come from Paul.
It's been 7 years, and we've all seen the results. We've seen the deflections. We've seen the smears. But it's time that we bring back a government that is actually listening to people. And as your MLA here in Vancouver Point Grey, I will absolutely make sure that I listen to you, that I give you a voice back to here in Vancouver Point Grey. And it's simply we're headed in the wrong direction right now in this province. And the question is, after 7 years, is your life better than it was before? And why would you trust the people that broke it to fix it? This is the fundamental question. We need to restore the dream that it was to be a British Columbian, where people can afford housing, food, and energy. The Conservative government will do that. We'll bring common sense change back to this province here in BC.
Thank you, Paul. Devyani, please. Devyani.
Thank you. I want to start with one person saying, is this government working for you? The other says, did the government before that work for you? That's because we keep electing the lesser evil and the status quo. I'll tell you when the government worked for you. It was when the Greens held the balance of power from 2017 to 2020. We helped push Clean BC. We pushed for limits to electoral funding. That's what we are asking for. We Greens are not looking for a majority. We aim for a minority because the minority governments work for you. And stop, voting out of fear. Like I said earlier, vote for hope. Vote with your heart. Vote for the change you want to see. Because where has this voting out of fear and voting for the lesser evil according to you, whoever that might be, has brought you? We're in a climate emergency. We're facing unprecedented costs of living. Affordable healthcare access lacks. And I'm actually appalled there was no climate question, because literally everything is intersectional and climate change touches everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Devyani. And David, your 1 minute.
Thanks. You know, to come into this debate and the leaders' debate without a costed platform, without telling people actually what it is that you're going to do, what your plans are to address these really hard issues. Yes, people are struggling. Yes, they need housing. We've got to continue to do the work. We've got to address our healthcare system. But we have no idea what the Conservatives are going to do. They're going to do a costing review. We've seen that before, $360 million in cut to our healthcare system. A GP for Me program that left fewer people with a family doctor at the end of it than at the beginning. And we're finally turning the corner on these issues. You know, rents are finally starting to come down in British Columbia. People are finally being connected to family doctors. For the first time in 20 years, fewer people looking for a family doctor than the year before. And it's accelerating. Now is not the time to take the foot off the gas. We got to keep going.
Thank you very much, David. Sorry, everyone, just hold on 1 second. Before I feel less of a parent and let you all express appreciation for everyone who showed up tonight, I did want to thank the candidates, the community, on behalf of the organizers. I know it's not easy to come to show up to be engaged in this way collectively. We're all very passionate about our community, and I appreciate you all being here for this process. And so a big round of applause for everyone who showed up tonight, including our candidates. Thank you. The hall will remain open until 7:20, and so if you want to social or connect, please feel free to do so. At 7:20, we will be asking folks to leave. Please be mindful of our neighbors. St. James is a great place in our neighborhood, and so please respect our neighbors. And if you haven't noticed, we have a small donation bin. This event was run off of 3 organizations that have incurred the cost for it. And so thank you very much.